So we're here today, April the 14th, 2024, with Richard and Marsha Standage of the Globe First Ward, longtime members of the Globe Stake. We thank you for being willing to visit with us. And the first question we have for you is we'd like to ask both of you to share a little bit about your backgrounds. So, can you share a little bit about your upbringing, and don't go all the way until basically everything that happened before you got here to Globe?
I was born in Mesa, Arizona. My mother was also born in Mesa, so longtime residents of Mesa. My dad was from Overton, Nevada, and he opened up the Swears men's store in Mesa, Arizona, that's where I worked for many, many years. And so they were active members of the church. The church was always important to me. We always attended our meetings. And I had 4 sisters and 1 brother. And then graduated from Westwood High School, and then met Richard. I knew of his family. They were in the same stake as I was, a Maricopa stake in Mesa. And I knew his sister because she graduated with me. And anyway, so we were on a blind date and met each other and got married September 6, 1968. And he finished his schooling and graduated, and to get a job, he ended up getting one in Miami as an art teacher. So we moved up here in 1970 with the plans of only being here for a year or 2. But as you can tell, it's been a lot longer than that. And we have enjoyed it here. We've had 5 sons, and our 3rd son only lived for 2 hours. So we did not get to raise him, but we know where he is and are anxiously awaiting to be with him again. And have been happy here in Globe and have enjoyed the things that we have done here. I did not work until my youngest son was a freshman in high school, and the son up above him was a senior. And that's when I started working full-time at Globe High School. And otherwise, I was a stay-at-home mom and was busy with all of their activities, and
she was a seminary secretary for quite a while before that.
Well, a part-time for 10 hours a week when they had release time secretary. I did do that for a while. But anyway, we've enjoyed it and had lots of good, sad, busy, fun times here in Globe.
Brother Standage.
I grew up in Mesa also, as you mentioned, but we grew up on when I say we, my family, grew up on my grandmother's land, which was a farm, and it was on Main Street, if you can imagine that, West Main, between Alva School and Extension. And the farmhouse is gone, but we had wonderful bringing up on Granny's farm, which wasn't a farm until my dad started farming it. I didn't know my grandfather because he passed away before I was born. And my dad was one of the younger of the siblings. I think he had 9 siblings. And I went to Alma School, elementary school, which is now something else on Alma School Road. But at that time, it was just like an oiled road, 2-laner with dirt sidewalks. And went to Mesa High School and all those places that my wife went to except Westwood. I was the last one to graduate from Mesa High School when all the population of Mesa went to that one high school. they already had started Westwood High School that Marsha was in, but they didn't have a senior class when I graduated. So that's kind of how it came about. We go back to 1880 at least, down there in the valley. And I felt like because of my pioneer ancestors, I had a lot to live up to. My mother was pretty much the matriarch of the family, and Dad was quiet and patient and a good provider and husband and father. Set a good example. He had grown up rather inactively, I would say, as a boy. Things were kind of laid back in those days. He didn't get activated until the Elders Quorum president took an interest in him, and the bishopric. And my mom said, you need to get your life in order, because if you want to marry me, it's going to be in the temple. Otherwise, no dice. So he did. And here we are.
Great. Now, you served a mission to Canada, correct?
Yes.
Where in Canada did you serve?
Well, they called it the Great Canadian Mission then, because that's where a lot of the early church missionaries went. And so it was in the provinces of Ontario and Quebec. And I was in Toronto area mostly, but I also went to Montreal for about 6 months. We had another missionary from Globe that was there, which was surprised me. His name was Corey Corvo. So that played into our history when we came up here.
Virgil Alexander.
And Virgil Alexander was there too, but I didn't know him at that time. I just ran into him on my mission. Later on, we ran into him when we moved up here.
Were you English speaking when you were in Montreal?
Yes, I was. I can't speak French at all. And a lot of the French can understand the Quebec French, they tell me anyway.
So how did the two of you meet?
A friend of mine, Dave Openshaw, needed a double date. His girlfriend, or his date, insisted on it. And she recommended Marsha. Marsha's older sister was Karen, who was my age. And so I said, I know that family a little bit. I guess I would be game for it, but I feel a little awkward because I don't really know her. So he set it up, and we went to, a football game, I believe it was.
High school football game.
Mesa High School versus somebody. And that's how I met her. And that's kind of where I left it. And later on, I think we went on a double date to a prom, and things got serious after that. It was Institute prom, I think, or Institute dance.
I think so.
So you tell us about. We know that you started teaching in Miami, but how did you get to the Globe Miami area? I mean, what made you consider this area? What were some of your first impressions when you got here? Especially living in Mesa at that time. Mesa was probably majority membership in the church, as opposed to the way it is today. What was that? What was it like to get here, and exactly how did you get here?
Well, while I was going to ASU, I went to, my wife and I were married then in 1968. So that summer, we went up to visit our cousins who were manning the fire tower up there at Greens Peak, up in the White Mountains. And so we spent the night there in the fire tower, and on our way home the next day, we came through Salt River Canyon and through Globe. And I made a comment to my wife, said, that little town is very picturesque. Speaking from an artistic point of view, I said, that would be interesting to come up and investigate this little town. I remember passing through it a few times when we went up to Sholo with my parents, but hadn't really paid much attention to it until then. And I had a job offer up here that couldn't turn down really if you wanted to. I wanted to go on with teaching so we could start our family after 2 years of college at ASU. And so I took the job in Miami, and luckily they offered it to me. And then they offered my wife a job as a secretary at Miami High School.
And we did ask when we met with the superintendent, do we have to live in Miami or can we live in Globe? And
No offense to the Miami ones.
Miami, it's changed a lot since then. And so they said, no, we could live in Globe. And we did. We lived out in Six Shooter Canyon in a trailer when we first moved up here. And there was just one ward then.
And Bishop Ellsworth was a bishop, I believe.
Ardell Ellsworth.
Anyway, that was, it's not like I'm sliding Miami or Claypool people.
Right.
Because we wound up way out in the sticks at the end of the road, just before it turned into dirt almost, in that little trailer camp. But it turned out a good experience, because right across the street was Van Smith, who was an active member of the church and a dentist in town. And right in front of us was Johnny O'Connor and his family, and he was a school teacher in Globe. He was teaching auto mechanics and other things there, and we became really good friends. And also Peggy and Roger Evans lived across the road. And it was the only trailer park that had any empty space. Actually, they did not have any empty spaces.
They made a space for us.
They dug a 6-inch ditch and put a water line over to an empty spot by the creek, and I made the space. And then she put in a septic tank, but no leach line. That's how we started out up there. First winter, our water line froze for 3 days. That's the way it went. We were camping out, and I often told myself, what have I done coming to this place? We're camping out. And I was teaching at Miami High School, teaching art. I got to know some of the Miami folks, which ones were LDS, and which weren't a whole lot, but they were in some of my art classes. Not sure what they thought of me, but some for good and some for evil, I guess. But that's the way it is when you're a teacher.
So, how long did you stay with the Miami School District?
28 years. I went from high school until they had a big strike or something, and they said, we're going to make a junior high to get all these little 8th graders out of the high school. And so I said, you have a choice. You can either be the full-time junior high art teacher or half-time high school art teacher. He said, we don't have budget enough to have 2 art teachers at the high school and none at the elementary. And so I had to weigh that very carefully, because I really didn't want to teach junior high. But I did. And Tom Hick was the principal, and we had quite a bit of good experiences learning a whole different generation of youth to teach.
So for both of you, you grew up, spent most of your life before coming here in Mesa, where it would have been a high percentage members of the church. Our stake doesn't have that same high percentage. A lot of good members of the church here, but what was it like living in a community where there are a significant number of members of the church, but you're clearly in the minority as far as being a member of the church?
I'm sure we have different perspective. Why don't you tell about yours?